Hello YouTube, it is your boy GTTV back with another video. And in this video, we are going to be talking about the season premiere for Season 4. So yeah, Season 4, Episode 1, pretty decent episode. And I feel like this season has a lot at play. I think there's going to be a lot of decent things that happen. On paper, it actually looks pretty good. There's introductions to a couple new characters. And yeah, when a stranger calls, what do you do? So... Excuse me, I have like a stuffed throat this morning. Pause. But the season premiere of the first half of the final season of Netflix's hit Ozark strikes a solemn, foreboding tone. And yeah, there are like two halves to the season, which is why it's like 12 episodes, I think, or like 14 episodes rather than 10. So yeah, there's like a part A and a part B, kind of like what Breaking Bad did. I think that's a really cool way to do a season. So yeah. It's like watching people sink into quicksand as the downfall of the Bird family feels inevitable with each passing episode. It feels like we're getting closer and closer to the end for these people. The opening flash forward shows a seemingly happy Bird family driving before they swerve to avoid an oncoming truck and go flipping off the highway, setting the stage for the rest of the season. What or who will be that truck in the life of the Birds? And will their downfall come from within? That's a really interesting flash forward, and obviously they don't get into this episode because they're trying to set up for a cliffhanger. They're trying to get people intrigued. You know, oh, well, how do they get there? I'm just going to keep watching until that happens. So the beginning and the end is really about four potential problems in the form of two new characters and two familiar ones. Ruth Langmore, obviously played by the wonderful Julia Gardner. Garner is one of the latter. A strong, confident young woman who wants to carve out her own empire in a way that's likely to be a problem for the Bird family. There's a lot of crazy things with her storyline that you wouldn't expect. I mean, Jonah's thinking about laundering money for her. It's kind of crazy, man. We're in a crazy place in this show right now. I never thought that would happen. I mean, I think that's just a crazy thing to think about, you know. The other is right on the family tree as Jonah Bird, played by Skylar Gardner. He has been nursing a building rage towards his mother since the murder of his Uncle Ben, who is played by Tom Pelphrey, who did an amazing job last season. He had some of the best performances. He probably was like the Julia Gardner of last season. So as for the new faces, you get Javi Elizondo, played by Alfonso Herrera, the nephew of crime lord Omar Navarro, played by Felix Solis. Looks like serious trouble, and it feels like the private investigator digging into the whereabouts of Helen Pierce, played by Janet McTeer, can only unearth skeletons. So there's four major characters that I feel like we're kind of hinting at being the players here in this season. So speaking of Helen, the episode truly opens with Wendy, played by Laura Linney, and Marty Bird, played by Jason Bateman. It's a new season. I kind of have to reintroduce, who plays these characters, because we're going to be giving plenty of credit to these guys later on, and I want you guys to know who I'm talking about here. So, it begins with those two, wiping her brain matter out of her hair, as, obviously Helen got fucking blicked. Ah, man. It picks up shortly after the murder of Helen, as Marty and Wendy are given matching blue outfits to join the party at the Navarro compound to celebrate the baptism of his child. They're a team now. They may have been at odds at points in the first 3 seasons, but they can't be now. They have to work together. They have to put their heads down and get to work, man. They got to do stuff for Navarro. And yeah, they're not going to do that if they have constant marital turmoils, So Omar tells them that his competition has been raided, and they meet Javi, who might as well wear a flashing sign around his neck that says trouble. I mean, this guy is just totally hinting at it. I mean, he wants nothing but issues like this the entire time he's on the screen. It turns out that Helen had told them about Darlene Snell, played by Lisa Emery, rebuilding her empire, and now Marty has been tasked with making her stop. Omar says, "My nephew is impatient." What? I'm so confused. What role does this man's nephew play? Hopefully we can figure that out later on in the season, because it's really confusing why we should be scared of this guy. Why, he's impatient. Why does that matter to us? I don't know. That could be a problem. He also says, "Your greatest threat will never come from the inside, Marty. Never forget that." He's talking about Javi sensing weakness in his uncle's place on the throne, but it could just as easily be a warning about Jonah Bird, which I don't know how anyone else would know about that. About what he's been doing, but I guess so. Omar wants Marty's help getting a parachute out of the confines of the criminal underworld. He wants to move freely and could make concessions to the FBI to do so. Basically, he wants the birds to launder him, to clean him up, to get him out of the drug business. It's crazy, man. It's a really crazy request, and it's not something you would expect from Omar Navarro because I feel like, you know, I don't know. I feel like as a drug lord in an operation that's that major, you wouldn't have the pride. You'd have too much pride to like back out of that. I don't know. Meanwhile, Ruth is returned to the Lazio Motel, where she used to be a maid until she was fired for ripping off the guest. If you do, it's funny. This is such a full circle moment. If you don't remember, like the birds stayed there when they first got to the Ozarks because they didn't feel safe in their house or whatever. It's crazy, man. Ruth wants to buy it outright for $450,000 and has the loan to do so. Does she really want to own a piece of this town and have her voice represented in the community? Not really. I mean, that's kind of bullshit what she's saying. A follow-up scene with Darlene and Wyatt, who's played by Charlie Tahan, quickly reveals that they need a business through which to launder money, and the motel will do. That's kind of her motivation behind this thing. She offers a cut to Darlene, wherein she and Wyatt will take 25% of the profits, and that Darlene's cut will be 50%. But Darlene affirms that Wyatt's cut will be equal to her own. You know, obviously they're in like a relationship. She wants to do a lot for this guy. Plus, he's a kid, pretty much. Like, he's damn near a kid, so it is really fucked up. How old is Wyatt in the story? I guess he's like 18 or 19. It's still fucking weird as shit. I don't know, man. It's an interesting play in that Darlene is making clear that Wyatt is on her level, and they're both above Ruth in this operation. I don't think Ruth really minds that because it's not her farm, you know. But, yeah. Jonah comes to see Ruth and gives her Ben's ashes, revealing that he knows that Wendy had him killed. I need to check something real quick, sorry. Sorry for the delay in the episode, or in the review. I have to check my fantasy. It's that serious, guys. But, okay, so need to scroll back to where I was. Oh shit, I already was on this page. Yeah. So Jonah comes to see Ruth and gives her Ben's ashes, revealing that he knows that Wendy had him killed. The anger and loss about Ben will connect Jonah and Ruth in a way that's sure to be dangerous for everyone involved. I mean, they definitely have a bonding point there with each other. This is going to be a long episode because of that. If it comes to Jonah having to betray Ruth to save his family, he likely won't because of the shared affection they have for Ben. It's also interesting that this beat is followed by Charlotte, played by Sophia Hublitz, kicking Ruth out of the office at the casino. There are two very different dynamics with Ruth and the Bird kids. It's really interesting to see that kind of develop, and it's kind of surprising because I feel like Charlotte and Jonah have been on the same page for the longest time. But now they're not. So Wendy and Bird make it home to find their windows destroyed, which Jonah did at the end of last season in his anger over Ben's death. It worsens when Wendy reveals Helen is dead, and Jonah realizes that there was no real reason to kill Ben, although that's arguably not entirely true. A guy named Mel, played by Adam Rothenberg, a PI from Chicago, shows up looking for Helen, which, how funny is that, the second that Wendy's talking about it. He claims that her husband wants to expedite the divorce, her husband, but he seems shady, and not just because he uses the word squirrely and has a cat named Loretta Lynn. After he leaves, Wendy makes no apologies to her son, telling him to clean up his mess. Wendy's stark lack of empathy could come back to haunt her. You're talking about Jonah Bird. It's not like this kid's just a slouch. He's not just going to sit back and take that. He's capable of some things, you know. So, as the Birds discuss turning Omar into a pillar of society and convincing Darlene to shut down her heroin operation, the show returns to Maya Miller, played by Jessica Francis Dukes, the very pregnant FBI agent who has become entangled in the Ozark criminal underworld. She had the intel that led to the raid of Omar's competitor, and it turns out she's not returning to her desk job but headed back into the field. Later, the Birds talk about needing Maya to help launder Omar. It feels like this plan will either get them out of this world forever or end their family. It's a very much a life or death situation, a very happy or a very sad ending, not in between. So in a meeting at the Bell, Wendy and Marty discover that Ruth is laundering money for the Snell Pyre, and they warn everyone involved to shut it down. That's not going to happen. But the bigger problem for now could be Mel, who sneaks into Helen's house after a frustrating meeting with Sheriff Nix, played by Robert C. Trevelyan. He finds footage of Jonah holding a shotgun on Helen and takes it to the Birds. This could be some fucking blackmail material. This is not good for Jonah. This is not good for the rest of the Bird family. Yeah. After he leaves, Wendy loses it. She's still trying to be an angry mother to Jonah, which is rich at this point. The traditional roles of motherhood no longer apply. I mean, Jonah goes to Ruth and offers her the software he built from his father's, further tying them together. I have to finish this video up. She offers him a job laundering money from her, which can only end poorly. He declines at first, but later rides his bike to the Lazy L like a true criminal and agrees to the job. Javi makes a surprise appearance at the Bell before ending up at the Bird's house and revealing that he voted to kill Wendy and Marty instead of Helen. Yikes. He's told that Darlene has the local cops in her pocket, and so when he meets Nix at Helen's house later, he does what any sociopath would do and shoots him in the chest and head. He drives the dead cop to the Birds in the trunk of the cop car, and Jonah sees them unloading the body. Yikes, that's not good. That's just not good. I don't know. But, yeah, leave a like, comment, subscribe. I am out, guys. There's a lot of things stacking up. I kind of had to get this video out, but I'm getting ready to go to lunch and whatnot. So, yeah, hopefully you guys have a good rest of your day.